The storm broke just as she pulled into the driveway. Thunder rattled the sky, sharp and violent, while sheets of rain hammered against the windshield of her battered little hatchback. The wipers struggled, squealing across the glass. But the mansion at the top of the hill was impossible to miss. Its windows glowed like eyes in the darkness, golden against the storm. Clara cut the engine and gripped the steering wheel. Her heart was racing harder than it should have. She had delivered to dozens of houses before, teeny apartments, quiet cottages, the occasional wealthy neighborhood. But nothing like this. Nothing so intimidating. The order had been unusual. Gourmet dishes from the city's most expensive restaurant. Enough food for 10 people, yet only one name on the receipt. And the address, whispered among drivers as the house no one really orders from. Just a quick note: if you're new here and haven't subscribed, please take a moment to do so. Your support means the world and helps us share more heartfelt stories. She grabbed the insulated bags, water soaking through her shoes as soon as she stepped onto the gravel. Her jacket clung to her, useless against the cold rain. Still, she forced herself toward the massive oak doors and pressed the brass bell. The chime echoed, deep and haunting. For a long moment, nothing. Then, the sound of bolts sliding. The door opened. A man stood there, not a butler, not in a uniform, just a tall figure in a dark sweater, his presence filling the frame. His hair was streaked with gray, his expression unreadable, but his eyes caught her off guard. They were sharp, but not unkind. "You must be Clara," he said, his voice low and steady. She blinked, tightening her grip on the bags. "Yes, you delivery from Maison Pierre." He stepped aside. "Come in." Clara froze. No customer had ever invited her inside. Usually it was an exchange at the door, maybe a quick thank you, then gone. But the rain was coming down in sheets, and she was already soaked to the bone. Against her better judgment, she crossed the threshold. The door closed behind her with a weighty finality. The entryway stretched before her, black and white marble floors, a sweeping staircase, crystal chandeliers that glittered like captured starlight. The air smelled faintly of sandalwood and polished wood. She felt suddenly small, standing there in a wet jacket, clutching paper bags of food. "Where would you like me to set these down?" she asked, her voice more fragile than she intended. The man's gaze lingered on her for a beat too long before he answered. "The dining room, this way." He led her down a long hallway, the walls lined with oil paintings, faces she didn't recognize, eyes that seemed to follow her. She quickened her pace to keep up with him. When they reached the dining room, she nearly stumbled. The table stretched the length of the room, polished so brightly it mirrored the chandelier above. Yet only one place had been set, a single plate, a single glass, silver cutlery that gleamed in the light. "Here?" Clara asked, her voice hushed. He nodded. She unpacked the dishes one by one, their aroma filling the room: roasted duck, truffle pasta, delicate soup, the kind of food she'd never tasted in her life. When she finished, she stepped back. "That's everything. I'll just ring it up." She reached for her phone, but his voice stopped her. "Stay." Her head snapped up. "Excuse me." He pulled out the single chair and gestured toward it. "It's raining too hard to drive. Sit, eat with me." Her pulse quickened. Everything about this was wrong. Delivery drivers didn't sit with customers, especially not in mansions where shadows lingered at the edges of the room. And yet his tone wasn't commanding. It was weary, lonely. She should have refused. She should have left. Instead, she found herself sinking into the chair. The man sat across from her, filling her glass with water. "I'm Elias," he said, finally giving her a name. Clara hesitated, then replied, "Clara." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain battered the tall windows. The chandeliers flickered with each rumble of thunder. Then Elias broke the silence. "No one has sat at this table in a long time." Clara's throat tightened. There was weight in his words, something unspoken hanging in the air. She glanced at the feast spread across the table, at the empty chairs, at the single setting that had been waiting. And in that moment, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This dinner was not just a meal, it was an invitation into a story she did not yet understand. The silver knife glinted under the chandelier as Elias cut into the roasted duck. Steam curled upward, carrying with it the rich scent of spices Clara had only ever smelled when dropping off food, never when sitting at the table herself. He placed a portion on her plate before serving his own, moving with quiet precision, like a man used to rituals he could not let go of. Clara hesitated, her fork hovering. "You didn't have anyone else coming?" she asked carefully, glancing at the untouched expanse of table around them. Elias paused mid-motion. His eyes flicked toward the far end of the table, then back to her. "No, not anymore." The words sat heavy between them. She shifted in her chair, her damp clothes clinging to her skin. Every instinct screamed to leave, to get back to the storm in the familiar safety of her little car. But curiosity anchored her in place, so she asked the question she shouldn't have. "What happened?" For a long time, Elias didn't answer. The thunder outside filled the silence, rattling the tall windows, echoing through the hollow rooms. Finally, he set down his utensils, folded his hands, and spoke. "This house was never meant to be this quiet," he said. His voice carried a tired ache, like each word cost him something. "It used to be full: family, friends, laughter. Now there's only echoes." Clara's chest tightened. She hadn't expected vulnerability. Not here. Not from him. She tried a bite of the duck to fill the silence. The flavor was exquisite, a burst of herbs and tenderness unlike anything she'd eaten before. She chewed slowly, aware of Elias watching her reaction. "It's good," she said softly. A faint smile flickered across his face, then disappeared. "I ordered too much. Old habits die hard." Another crash of thunder shook the chandelier, and for a moment the lights flickered. Clara swallowed, glancing upward. "Does the storm bother you?" Elias asked. She shook her head. "No, I've lived with worse. Old apartments with leaky roofs, nights when the power cut out for hours. I guess you get used to storms when life's already rough." Elias studied her, his expression unreadable. "You live alone." She hesitated. The question was too direct, too personal, and yet something about his gaze disarmed her. She found herself nodding. "Yeah. I've been on my own a while." A silence stretched again. Only the rain filled the space, drumming against the glass like restless fingers. Then Elias leaned back, his voice lower. "Do you believe people carry ghosts with them, Clara?" The word sent a shiver crawling up her arms. "Ghosts? Not the kind that rattle chains," he said. "The kind that linger inside. Regrets, memories, faces you can't forget." Clara's fork stilled over her plate. Something in his tone, raw weighted, made her heart pound faster. She wanted to ask whose face he still saw, but before she could, the sound of footsteps echoed faintly from the hallway. Clara's head snapped toward the door. "Is someone else here?" Elias didn't turn. His jaw tightened. "No, just us." But the steps had been real, soft, deliberate. They had passed by the door and vanished deeper into the house. Clara's pulse spiked. She searched his face for an explanation, but Elias simply picked up his glass and took a slow sip of water, as though nothing had happened. The chandelier trembled again with the storm. She tried to steady her breathing, but the air in the room felt heavier now, thicker, carrying unspoken questions she didn't dare voice. Finally, Elias looked at her again. His gaze was steady, but something flickered beneath it as sadness. "A warning. You shouldn't always trust the doors in this house," he murmured. "Some are better left closed." The words chilled her more than the storm ever could. Clara sat frozen in her chair, fork untouched, the taste of roasted duck lingering on her tongue. Somewhere in the mansion, a door creaked shut and the sound echoed like an omen. The storm raged on, hammering against the windows, but Clara could no longer tell if the chill crawling over her skin was from the weather or the house itself. Elias spoke little after that. He returned to his food with the quiet focus of someone who had eaten alone too many nights. Clara pushed hers around the plate, appetite fading, her ears tuned to every faint creak in the walls. When the lights flickered again, she whispered, "Maybe I should go." Elias looked up, his expression unreadable. Then, softly, "You could, but the storm will follow you down that road, and your little car might not make it. It's safer here." She wanted to argue, but a flash of lightning lit up the tall windows, followed by a crash that shook the house to its foundations. The truth was, he was right. Driving out into that storm could be dangerous still. Something inside her urged caution. "Safer," she echoed, as though testing the word. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on her. "You don't trust me," she swallowed. "I don't know you." For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he gave a small nod, almost approving, as though her honesty mattered. "Fair." The dining room felt suffocating. Clara needed air. She rose slowly. "May I look around?" Elias's eyes followed her, weighing the request. Then he gestured toward the hall. "Stay on the first floor. The rest of the house isn't meant for guests." She stepped out, her damp shoes echoing against the marble. The hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with portraits of stern men and elegant women, their painted eyes tracking her every step. The flickering lights gave them a pulse, as if they were almost alive. Clara's hand brushed the wall for balance. She caught sight of a door ajar near the end of the hall. She paused. Elias had said not to trust the doors, that some were better left closed. Then yet, the door seemed to call to her. The storm roared louder as she reached it. With trembling fingers, she pushed it open. The smell hit her first. Dust, leather, and something faintly sweet, like faded flowers pressed between pages. It was a library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves towered over her, filled with leather-bound books. A fireplace stood cold at the far end, its mantel lined with silver frames. She stepped closer, drawn to them. Photographs. In one, Elias stood with a woman, a delicate figure with dark hair and gentle eyes. His arm was wrapped protectively around her shoulders. They looked happy, alive. In another, Elias with a child, a little girl with braids and a gap-toothed smile, her laughter frozen in glass. Clara's chest tightened. She reached for the frame, brushing dust from its surface. The glass was cracked, the image slightly warped. Whoever these people were, they hadn't been here in a long time. "Clara," she jumped, nearly dropping the photo. Elias stood in the doorway, his figure cast long and dark by the hallway light. His eyes flicked to the frame in her hands. "You shouldn't be in here," he said quietly. "I'm sorry," she stammered, setting it back. "I didn't mean." He stepped inside, his footsteps soft against the rug. His gaze lingered on the photographs before shifting back to her. "They were my family," he said, voice low, roughened by grief. "My wife, my daughter." Clara froze. He moved closer to the mantel, his hand brushing the cracked glass of the photo. "They're gone now. The house remembers them, even if the world has forgotten." Her throat tightened. "What happened?" Elias's jaw clenched. For a moment, he looked as though he might answer, but then his eyes darkened, and he shook his head. "Some doors, Clara, some doors must stay closed." Before she could press further, a sound echoed down the hall. The faint creak of another door opening. Elias stiffened. His eyes shot toward the hallway, sharp and alert. He whispered, almost to himself, "Not tonight." Clara's pulse spiked. She backed toward the shelves. "There's someone else here." But Elias turned suddenly, his voice firm, urgent. "Stay close to me. Don't wander again." His tone left no room for argument. Clara nodded, though her mind raced. She had walked into a stranger's mansion, sat at his lonely table, and now stood in the ruins of a family she didn't understand. And somewhere in the house, another presence lingered. The storm wailed against the windows, but the sound inside the mansion was worse. A slow, deliberate creak, as if another door had just been left open. The sound of the creaking door echoed long after it stopped, sinking into the walls of the mansion like a whisper. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Elias stood rigid, one hand gripping the edge of the fireplace mantel as though anchoring himself against something unseen. "Who else is here?" Clara asked, her voice low, trembling. His jaw tightened. He didn't look at her. "No one you need to meet." That answer only made her pulse race faster. The thunder outside seemed to pound in time with her heartbeat. "I heard footsteps," she insisted. "Someone walked past the dining room earlier." Elias turned then, his gaze sharp, commanding. "Clara, leave it." But she couldn't. The unease in the house had taken root in her bones. Her eyes flicked toward the open library door, the hall beyond shrouded in shadows. And then, faintly, she heard it again, a soft shuffle, a breath, too close. Clara backed into the shelves, her fingers brushing cold spines of forgotten books. "Someone is here," she whispered. Elias strode past her in 2 long steps, pulling the door shut with a decisive slam. The sound jolted her heart. He turned the lock, his shoulders tense, his face pale in the flickering light. "Don't wander again," he said, voice rough. "There are parts of this house even I'd rather not see." Clara's throat tightened. "Elias, are you keeping me safe, or keeping me prisoner?" For a moment, he didn't answer. His silence was heavier than words. Finally, he exhaled, long and weary, both. Her blood ran cold. Before she could move, the lights above them sputtered and died. Darkness swallowed the library. The storm howled outside, wind tearing at the windows, rain lashing against the glass. Clara froze, her breath loud in her ears. "Elias, I'm here," his voice answered from somewhere close. Too close, then another sound. From the hallway, a door creaking slowly open. Clara's hands fumbled against the wall until she found the edge of a table. Her voice came out shaky. "Tell me what's in this house." The silence that followed was unbearable, and then Elias's voice, low, almost broken. "Memories. Some of them don't like being forgotten." A sudden crash split the air somewhere down the hall. A door slammed shut with violent force. Clara flinched, nearly crying out. She grabbed Elias's arm, not even realizing until she felt the coarse knit of his sweater beneath her fingers. "What was that?" His reply was tight, clipped. "You weren't supposed to hear." The storm rumbled. The chandeliers above them swayed even though no wind touched them. Clara's skin prickled. The mansion wasn't just creaking, it was alive. Every corner breathing with a presence she couldn't name. "Elias," she whispered, "if there's something in this house, I need to know, please." He turned his face toward her in the dark. For a long moment, only the storm filled the silence. Then, finally, he spoke. "My wife and daughter," he said slowly. "This house doesn't forget them, and sometimes, I think they don't forget me either." Clara's stomach twisted. She wanted to believe she misunderstood, that he spoke in metaphor, but the chill in his voice told her otherwise. "You're saying, they're still here?" Elias didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the library door and pressed his ear against the wood. His body went taut. Then he pulled back sharply. "Stay behind me." Clara's heart thudded. "Why, what did you hear?" He didn't reply. He just stepped into the hall, his tall frame silhouetted against the flash of lightning seeping through a far window. Clara followed despite herself, her wet shoes squeaking against marble. The hallway stretched endlessly, portraits looming on either side. The air felt colder now, every breath a shiver. And then Clara saw it, at the far end of the corridor. A figure, a small silhouette, no taller than a child, standing perfectly still beneath the flickering chandelier. Clara's breath caught. "Elias, I see her," he murmured. The figure tilted its head, hair hanging in loose braids. For an instant, Clara thought she saw the same gap-toothed smile from the photograph. But when the light flickered again, the face was gone. The figure vanished. Clara staggered back, her voice breaking. No, I saw her." Elias's face was pale, his jaw clenched. "Yes, you did." The storm wailed through the windows. But inside the mansion, the silence was unbearable. And in that silence, Clara realized the truth she had been resisting. She was not alone with Elias. Something else had been waiting in the mansion all along. The storm outside reached its peak, rattling the mansion as if the sky itself wanted in. The rain pounded like fists against the glass, and lightning cut across the long corridor in jagged flashes. Clara's pulse thundered with it, her body rigid at the memory of the small figure she had seen. Then gone, like smoke dissolving into air. Elias stood still, his breath heavy, his eyes fixed on the space where the apparition had been. His hand trembled, though he hid it behind his back. Elias. Clara's voice was a whisper. What was that? His jaw worked tight, as though forcing the truth past teeth that wanted to lock it inside. My daughter. The words cracked something open. Clara's breath caught in her chest. I told you, Elias said, his voice low and uneven. This house remembers. Sometimes too much. She's still here. Clara, both of them are. He turned his face toward her, and in the flash of lightning she saw a man stripped of his composure, haunted by grief that had never found rest. Clara staggered back a step. You're saying they're dead? He cut her off with a single, heavy word. His gaze dropped. Taken from me years ago. A fire I got out. They didn't. The truth sank in like ice water down her spine. The portraits, the photographs, the silence that draped the halls like mourning cloth. It all fit. But why invite me here? Clara's voice shook. Why me? Elias's eyes met hers again, sharp and burning. Because you looked like someone who wouldn't run. The air pressed down on her chest. She wanted to argue, to say he was wrong. But deep down, she knew. When the door first opened and she saw him standing there, she hadn't fled. Even when the house whispered warnings, even when shadows lingered, she had stayed. She had wanted to understand. A sound broke the silence. Another door, far off, creaking slowly. Clara's skin prickled. Elias stiffened. Then the voice came, faint, childlike, a whisper rolling down the hallway, carried on the breath of the storm. Papa. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. Elias's face went ashen. He whispered, almost pleading, not tonight. But the footsteps came again, soft, small, running across the marble. The chandelier trembled. The air dropped cold. And then Clara saw her, the child again, standing halfway down the corridor now, closer than before. But her face was pale, too pale, her eyes shadowed. A smile stretched across her lips, eerie in its stillness. Clara's throat locked. She wanted to move, to scream, but Elias stepped forward. Lena, he whispered, voice breaking. It's me. The figure tilted its head, the braids swaying. Another flash of lightning split the room and the girl was gone. Elias fell to his knees, his hand pressed to his face. His shoulders shook, and for the first time Clara realized the strength he'd carried all evening had been crumbling from the start. She crouched beside him, her own fear mixing with something else, pity. Elias, they're gone. Whatever's left here, it's not them. His breath hitched, ragged. But if I let go, then I lose them twice. Clara touched his arm gently, grounding him. You'll never lose them. Not if you carry them in you. But keeping yourself in this house, chained to ghosts, that's not living. That's burying yourself with them. The words trembled out of her, but they hung in the air with a weight that silenced the storm itself for a heartbeat. Elias slowly lowered his hand. His eyes, red and glassy, met hers, and for the first time, she saw something flicker there, not the haunted man who had invited her in, but a broken father desperate for release. Outside, the storm began to ease. The thunder rolled softer, further away. The rain thinned, tapping gently now against the glass. Clara stood, offering him her hand. Come with me, leave this house, start breathing again. For a moment he only stared at her. Then, slowly, he placed his rough, trembling hand into hers. She helped him to his feet. Together they walked down the long corridor, past the portraits, past the locked doors, past the weight of memory pressing in from every wall. At the front entrance, Elias paused. He turned back once, his gaze sweeping the mansion, the chandeliers, the staircase, the shadows, and then faintly, almost kindly, the voice of a child whispered through the still air. Goodbye, Papa. Elias closed his eyes. His shoulders shook, but when he opened them again, his face was different, weary, hollow, but free. Clara opened the heavy door. Cool air washed over them, clean and damp from the rain. The night smelled of earth and renewal, not ash and memory. They stepped outside together. Behind them the mansion loomed in silence. For the first time in years, its windows did not glow like watchful eyes. Elias inhaled deeply, as though tasting air for the first time. Clara stood beside him, uncertain of what came next, but knowing one thing with quiet certainty. She hadn't just delivered dinner that night. She had delivered a man from his ghosts, and for the first time in a long while, the night felt alive with possibility. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories to life. And if you stayed until the very end, thank you. Let us know in the comments what part of this story moved you most.